Recording live from Glory Hole Studios in Chicago and beyond. This is Cognitive Dissonance. Every episode we blast anyone who gets in our way. We bring critical thinking, skepticism, and irreverence to any topic that makes the news, makes it big, or makes us mad. It's skeptical, it's political, and there is no welcome mat. Today is Thursday, November the 16th. And we got to start the show off a little bit by talking about what we're not talking about. Right. So we have not talked about on the show the events of October the 7th or any of the subsequent.
Yeah, much. We did a very briefly. Yeah.
Or any of these subsequent response by Israel. And I want to tell you guys kind of why. And Cecil and I have had a lot of private conversations.
Yeah. And we've also received a little bit of email about it too.
We have. So for me, for Tom, just speaking for myself, I have read and listened to just about everything I can think to read and listen to. And the conclusion that I've come to is that you should not be coming here for your news or opinion or analysis on this topic. I don't feel qualified to weigh in on this. I've tried, guys. I have tried really hard. I've had a lot of conversations privately with Cecil in person, over the phone, by text. I've talked to everybody I can think to talk to about this. And
you've consumed.
I've consumed
for hours and hours of. Me too. I mean, I've consumed a ton on this. Yeah.
And I just keep coming back to, this is a time where we need to be listening to different voices than mine.
Yeah.
About this topic.
Yeah,
I am not your voice. And it's not because I don't have thoughts and feelings about what's going on. I do. But I should not be your voice right now. Like, you need to listen to people with much more expertise, much deeper well of knowledge, much better grasp of the situation.
Teams of writers. People have teams of writers.
This is not time for Tom and his dick jokes or Tom and his hot takes. It's inappropriate. That's how I feel. I just keep wanting to have enough to where I can say, Cecil, I feel comfortable talking about this. Here's what I can add to this conversation in this fraught moment.
Yeah.
And I just keep feeling like in this fraught historical moment with global significance and all of the complexity and the history behind it, I can't think of anything where I'm like, here's what I've got to add right now.
Yeah. Here's what me, a guy who lives really far away, who doesn't really have much of a stake in any of this, has to say about it.
Yeah.
Because I feel entitled to talk about it.
Right. And I just don't feel entitled to talk about this.
And I don't know that, I don't think we should. I also recognize too, like there are some good sources that I've run into, and I would suggest check out John Oliver's take on it. Last week Tonight did a 30-minute episode on it, and it was such a reasoned, measured take on the whole thing. And, I would bare bones it for you, but he comes to the conclusion that we shouldn't be blaming Jews everywhere and even Jews in Israel for what Israel is doing, right? You shouldn't be blaming them and attacking them and going after them, because there's many people, even in Israel, who disagree with what Israel is doing right now.
Sure. It's like we don't blame, specifically, we're not blaming like the individual people of Palestine for what Hamas does, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
So I don't want to hot take it. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
We can't paint everybody with these broad brushes, especially and importantly right now. This is the wrong time to do that.
Then after he talks about how people are reacting to Israel, he does mention that he thinks the only real answer is a ceasefire. It's something I agree with too. I think the only real answer to try to move forward at this point is a ceasefire. He talks about sort of just how difficult it is to come to any kind of conclusions with what is happening right now.
Right.
And we were talking before we started the show about how hard it is to even get information about what's happening, because there's so many misinformation actors that are, and these are governmental institutions and terrorist institutions and other things that are flooding the sort of information ecosystem with bad information.
Yeah.
We don't know what is true. We don't know what is real. And so we're in a really difficult spot, really far away from everything, to try to parse what's happening.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention too that we got a message from somebody. So this is a message from Dave. And Tom, why don't you just read it so we're fair?
It says, you have a chance to use your platform to criticize Joe Biden and other Democrats who take millions of dollars from groups like AIPAC to buy their complicity, and you aren't doing it. Why? Silence enables atrocities. And that is exactly what you're doing right now. If this continues, I will encourage everyone I can to divest from your podcast and others like PIAT. Silence is complicity. Do the right thing. Please speak up. Call for a ceasefire at the very least. History is watching.
I want to first say, I guess the first thing I want to say is like, don't listen to my show. And I want to say that because I think you misunderstand my motivations on this show. You think that if you're going to go out and tell people not to give me $1 or whatever, I'm going to change my mind. If you think that's how I act and that's how I react on the show and that's why I choose the things we do and that's why we talk about the things we do and that's why we're passionate about stuff, never listen. And in fact, if your friends are so easily convinced of that, you should take them with you. Take them all and go somewhere else because that's not what we do on this show. We talk about things that we're passionate about and that are very important to us. And this is something I think both of us are passionate about and it's important, but sometimes we don't talk about stuff because we're not smart enough to do it. We're not as informed as we think we should. And there doesn't need to be another hot take out in the fucking ether of two white guys talking about something that they're not part of.
Yeah, and your line here, I wrestled with this. Silence is complicity. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes our silence is an opportunity for other more informed voices to take up more air in the room and to take up more of the air space people should be listening to. And to have people say, well, look, I'm not getting this information here. I'm going to go elsewhere because I want you to go elsewhere.
I want you to too. Yeah.
I don't want you coming here for my hot take on something this important. And we talked before the show. This isn't like when Russia invaded Ukraine, right? That's a very straightforward situation, right? And it has a very straightforward solution. And there's no complexity there whatsoever, really. Not really. That's easy. We talked about it once. And then we stopped talking about Russia and Ukraine because we realized, like, I've got nothing left to add to that. That's it. You know, this situation, even more so, we've said it 100 times. This is not the place you come for your news.
Yeah.
Don't come here for your news. This is a place where you need to go find trusted sources, and that's hard right now. And we don't want to add to that. My silence is not complicity.
Yeah.
I do not have a lack of thoughts and feelings about this. What I have is a recognition that my thoughts and feelings are not well informed enough for me to blast that out into the ether responsibly.
And I want to say too, I definitely think there should be a ceasefire, but I'm saying that not because you sent me an email. I actually wrestled with even talking about this because of this email. Because this email came in, I was like, well, now what is he going to think? Like, what could he think? Yeah. Does he think I'm so easily manipulated as to do something because you're going to like threaten me or something with like $1 going away? Take your $1, go somewhere else. Don't ever come back.
Tickets, please.
Boss.
No ticket.
Here is Trump from the New Republic. It's official with Vermin. Trump is now using straight up Nazi talk. So let me read to you exactly what Trump is saying here specifically. He's using the word vermin to describe his political enemies. And this is intentional, right? Like, keep in mind that this language and the choice of the language that he uses, especially at this time, especially right now, this is fucking intentional shit. Like, this is not a mistake. This is not like, oh, I didn't know the history of that fucking word, right? So here's what he says. For Veterans Day. In honor of our great veterans on Veterans Day, we pledge to you that we will root out the communists, Marxists, fascists, and radical left thugs that live like vermin within the confines of our country, lie, steal, and cheat on elections, and will do anything possible, whether legally or illegally, to destroy America and the American dream. At a rally in New Hampshire, he basically said exactly the same things. He promised to, quote, root out the radical left thugs that live like vermin within the confines of our country. Then he said it again, the real threat is not from the radical right. The real threat is from the radical left. It's growing every day, every single day. The threat from outside forces is far less sinister, dangerous, and grave than the threat from within. Our threat is from within.
Yeah, that is straight up fascist talk right there.
Absolutely.
That you can't get closer to fascist talk. I mean, it's not close. It is fascist. It's not a dog whistle anymore.
No, it's just
for a while it was masked. It was this sort of dancing around. What? I'm just talking about Democrats being like rats or whatever it was that he was doing before. Now it is 100% out there. He's bearing it all. He's saying these are people who basically need to be exterminated.
Yeah, I mean, short of giving this speech from a balcony.
Yeah, man.
There's nothing that differentiates this speech.
Small little mustache.
Right.
Yeah.
That's it.
Weird walk.
Staring at the sun. That was different. That was different.
Day.
Also on a balcony.
Different day.
Also on a balcony. Fucking idiot. Yeah, there is no doubt. First of all, like the thing that I read to you was prepared and written. So those were not off the cuff remarks.
Yeah, right.
Then when you use the exact same phrase, it's because that phrase is a talking point in your speech writing, right? This is something that's been like workshopped. Oh, none of this is accidental. None of this is like a slip of the tongue. He is fomenting the same kind of like horrible, ultra-nationalist, right-wing, populist fascism that like he's been fomenting forever, right? And make no mistake, because he said this shit out loud. Here's the one thing you can trust about Trump. He has always said exactly who he is and what he's going to do.
Every time.
And for fucking some insane reason, people don't believe him. Yeah. Then he does and is every single thing he's ever said he was going to be and do. And then we're like clutching our pearls and shocked. Like, oh my God, I didn't know he would do exactly what he said he would do.
He came down an escalator and called Mexicans rapists.
Yeah, man.
I mean, it was like the first thing he said. One of the first things he said was to make it clear that he was 100% anti-immigration. That's what he wanted to do to make sure. And then within a very short amount of time, he let everybody know he could kill somebody and everybody would still vote for him.
Yeah.
And he's not wrong.
And he's not wrong. Because like there are people that for whatever reason are so entranced by this horrible fucking octogenarian. I don't get it. But like, you know, Cecil, he not only called.
Be nice.
Oh, is he? I thought he turned, when does he turn 80?
I don't think he's 80. I think he's like 76 or something.
Oh.
Which is sad. He should be older.
He looks older.
He's
a hard 76.
He's a hard 76. He's a
rough 76.
He's the odometer got rolled back on a 76. Yeah.
But like, not only did he say like all the Mexicans are rapists, but he was anti-immigration, but he was also like, just to like get a sense again, to remind everybody how openly racist
77.
He is.
Sorry, I gave him a year.
Yeah.
So you're right. He is older than 76.
He is older than 77. But like to remind people of how openly racist he is, he supports immigration unless it comes from what he called shithole countries.
And he said it out loud.
So he
said those words.
So like, and the countries he was referring to as not shithole countries were exclusively white European countries, man.
Wow.
Like,
where's my pearls? Did I leave them in the other room?
The guy is just like a fucking racist out loud. And we're just like, oh, well, I don't know what he'll do. If he gets into office, he is going to use the power of that office to attack his political enemies. He is 100%.
He has said he's going to do it. He's talking about bringing out special, like a police force as early on.
Yeah.
He's going to, I mean, do not be surprised if he wins that he rounds people up. And that's not hyperbole. That's not me trying to scare you. That's like literally, I don't think that's not going to happen. I think that's going to happen.
Well, look, what did the police do? Now, I know it wasn't federal action, but what did the police do during the riots of the summer of 2020? They drove around in unmarked vans.
They fucking kidnapped
people.
And
they kidnapped people.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So they drove around in unmarked vans and shot at people.
And they also like seeded all those like places where there was unrest with people who were like in black. Do you remember these people that were in black? The officers that were in black with their shit covered up. They sent out Border Patrol, essentially turned the Border Patrol into an armed guard. And that one guy walked up to a bunch of those guys and they broke his fucking arm. Do you remember watching that?
Yeah,
he broke his arm for no reason. He just walks up to him and he starts talking to him.
They beat the shit out of him.
Because here's the thing, man. They knew they could do whatever they wanted because they had the guy who was in charge behind him. Think of how emboldened they'll be next time.
Yeah, if he wins a second time. So if you show all your cards and you show everybody that you're a monster and they say, so the first time, here's how it works. This is important. The first time, he said he was a monster, but people didn't necessarily believe him.
Yeah.
Right? Now, you have to believe.
You have to.
And if he shows up, now he's like, they want the monster.
Yeah.
I don't have to hide anything. It's all coming out. It's all coming out.
There's a scene from the TV show The Boys, and I'm going to spoil this end of this, I think it's second or third season, I don't know which, but there's a character in it who's basically Superman, but he's bad. He's not a good guy. He pretends to be a bad guy or a good guy, but he's not. He's a bad guy. His name's Homelander. He's an evil, narcissistic, shitty person, right? He comes down and a bunch of people are, cheering for him or whatever. And one guy is like, you're a fucking major crazy person. You're a fascist. He starts screaming at him or something. And Homelander, in a fit of rage, turns and blows his head up. Just explodes his fucking head. Nukes his face with heat rays. And then everybody starts cheering. And then he realizes, I can just be a bad guy too if I want.
Yeah.
And that's what happened with Trump. Is like, January 6th happened. And all these other things where he tried to throw out the government. There's a story here where Trump said he wasn't going to leave the White House.
Yeah.
These people and it's not just one person, it was multiple people in this Georgia case testified on tape or gave testimony on tape where they said, he said he wasn't going to leave. He just wasn't going to leave the White House. That was planning on not leaving that day.
This shit's unbelievable. I'm going to read a big chunk of this article because it's important that you hear how everybody in his orbit also responded
Let me play it because I can play a little bit of Jenna.
Yeah,
Let me play a little bit of Jenna Ellis here.
Okay. And at the time period where they were going to start to discuss, what was Dan Scavino's role?
At the time, I believe his title was social media director for the White House. It became deputy chief of staff at the time that the conversation in question took place.
Okay, and when was that?
The conversation was around December 19th of 2020 at the White House Christmas party. And I emphasized him. I thought that the claims and the ability to challenge the election results was essentially over because he said to me in a kind of excited tone, well, we don't care and we're not going to leave. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, the boss, meaning President Trump, and everyone understood the boss, that's what we all called him. He said the boss is not going to leave under any circumstances. We are just going to stay in power. And I said to him, well, it doesn't quite work that way, you realize. And he said, we don't care.
And he was excited about it.
He was excited.
That's the part that I think
he was excited.
We need to not lose sight of. People in Trump's orbit were excited about his coup.
That's a detail she doesn't have to say. Right? Because she's just talking about Trump. The guy she's talking about isn't on trial.
Right.
That guy's not on trial. That's a detail she could have left out.
Sure.
She kept it in.
Yeah.
He was excited about it.
Yeah.
That doesn't help her case. It doesn't change anything.
No.
But it's something she remembered.
Right.
Right.
And it's important.
And it's important for us. It's not important for them. And it's not important for this case as much. But it's important for us to remember how his followers reacted to it.
Yeah. Well, and it just gives insight into what's next if we fuck this up.
Yeah.
Right? If we fuck this up, and I know people are like, well, a president can't have a third term. How do you fucking know? What if he doesn't leave again?
Yeah, man. And he might not have even won a second term and he might have taken it.
Right.
If there wasn't enough people in place to stop it, this could be a Trump nation right now.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. I also think that he's in a spot right now where there's nothing to lose and everything to gain.
Absolutely. He is back against the wall and he's most dangerous at that point.
Yeah. Who isn't?
Yeah.
If he goes to, if this doesn't work, this is his Hail Mary pass. 2024 is Trump's Hail Mary pass. And if it does not get caught, he's going to prison. And he'll die in prison.
And I want to point out,
he's 77 years old. I don't know if you know that.
I found out a minute ago. I will point out too that you can still run for president from prison.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's fucking insane.
Eugene V. Debs did it.
Yes,
and
that's true.
And he got votes. So you can still run from prison.
Yeah.
Although I do think there would be many chances for people to take him off the ballot in many places. So in a lot of states, he wouldn't even have a chance. So he wouldn't even get votes. So you know how we do like the popular vote to pretend at the end? They wouldn't even have that. He would have a minuscule number of votes. But you can still win, even if you weren't on several states' ballots, like on California or New York or Illinois.
He wasn't going to win those anyway.
It doesn't matter. He's not going to win them anyway. So in the states where it matters, he could still win the Electoral College because that's how stupid our system is.
That's a fucking trash system. God, we have a dumb fucking system.
I went on the internet and found Education Connection. I took some free tests to find out my direction.
So So this story comes from the AP, how to talk to older people in your life about scams. I really liked a lot of the advice in this article. So, you know, as people are aging and they are becoming more and more computer literate, they're spending time on, you know, dating apps as older people.
As older people, yeah.
They're spending time, you know, just
Banking
online,
and
in social media and other spaces, banking, etc. You know, they may be more susceptible for a variety of reasons to online scams.
Yeah.
And what I liked about this article is it was not just like, well, old people sure are dumb, aren't they? Because a lot of articles read that
Sure,
way.
yeah.
This does not.
No.
And it was like, well, you should really just like tell your folks, you know, tell your grandparents, tell your parents, like, don't fall for that scam. No, it's like they actually tell you, here's how you can address the power dynamic that's inherent in your relationship as parent and child.
Yeah.
And still help protect them in a way that preserves their dignity.
Absolutely. And I think that's so important. People who have been scammed or people who could possibly be scammed, it's the embarrassment of the whole thing is the part that is what keeps them silent afterwards, right? And it's why scams go unnoticed for a long time, or they go unreported to, you know, authorities and things like that, is because the people are embarrassed that they got scammed.
Yeah.
They hear and to have the empathy to talk to the people and to not blame the victim, which is, I think what happens is oh, you shouldn't have fallen for that.
Yeah.
Oh, you shouldn't have fallen for that. And that's blaming the victim, right?
Yeah.
Somebody went out of their way to cheat a person. We should empathize with the person who has been cheated and tricked by the person who was doing the tricking, who knew what was happening the whole time. You should be upset with that person, not with the person who was duped. And we do that a lot. And I do think, you know, this also addresses, I think, a bigger problem in the skeptic world, which is, and it, you know, I think we contribute to it sometimes too, where you kind of laugh at the dupes. I mean, a couple weeks ago, we were laughing about Trump bucks. You know what I mean? Like now I'm not laughing at the person's face, right? So I'm not calling the person and being like, you are an idiot, right? Even though there's a lot of me that wants to, but no, like there's a part of me that isn't doing that. But I would have a very different approach if this were someone from my family who fell for that.
Yeah, I think I would
have a very different approach.
I think in fairness, I would too.
And I would be a lot more empathetic to the people who are around me and to approach them in a way that's not condescending and to reach out to them in a way to sort of get their interest in it too. That's the other thing, is because some people will just be like, well, I'm not interested. I don't care about that, whatever. It's not going to happen to me. And they'll just sort of brush it away. But to get them to talk about it in a way that raises their interest is also important.
These things go unreported, but they go socially unreported too. And when things go socially unreported because we're embarrassed, because we feel shame, because we feel stupid, then like we're not helping the next guy to avoid that same scam.
Yeah.
If we can get rid of the stigma around scams, around being duped, around being tricked, if we can destroy that stigma, we will reduce the number of people that are tricked and duped and scammed. It's like the fact that it operates, not just only not reporting it to the police or authorities, but like we should be able to like look each other in the eye and be like, I got scammed. I don't want that to happen to you. Here's what happened to me. You know, and have the other person who's hearing and taking that story in not be like, nah, I'd never fall for that.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
Because now I feel like a dick. And now I feel like instead of like trying to like share my experience
right.
and like help you with my experience and maybe have a little empathy along the way, now I feel self-conscious.
Sure.
One of the things that they do, and it's funny because I do this in my work life all the time, is you approach it, what I think of as approaching it sideways. So if you hear about a scam and you want to like make sure that somebody in your life is not going to fall for that scam, but you think maybe addressing it head on, especially because of the power dynamic between kids and parents, might not be well appreciated. What you do is just bring it up as a subject, apropos of nothing personal. She'd be like, I've heard this story about like these scammers like talking to people online and doing this thing. And this is like how the scam worked. And isn't that a fascinating thing? And you have a conversation about it. And not about the person. And not in a way that like is like, you know, Dad, you're 77 years old and I'm getting a little worried about you.
Yeah.
And I don't want you to do this thing.
Yeah.
Like,
don't fall for a romance scam. Those are fake pictures, Dad. Don't be stupid.
Dad, I've seen you. Do you think, you know, chicks in bikinis are sending you pictures? Have you seen you? Dad. And nobody likes that.
Yeah.
When my kids do that to me, I don't like that.
You merely adopted the dark. I was born in it, molded by it.
This is bleak, man. This is from The Guardian. What does a Jordan Peterson conference say about the future of climate change? Apparently, we're headed towards human flourishing.
Now we're just doing straight on misinformation conferences.
Yeah, man.
Like
yeah,
hold
that's what
on.
it is. Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong. I know that they existed before. I mean, there's a fucking flat earth conference for Christ's sakes.
Yeah.
But like mainstream people are going here. They mentioned the people who went to this thing. And you're talking about 3 previous prime ministers, or at least higher ups in Australia went.
Yeah.
And the reason why they're going is because they want to hear this truth, right? They want to hear, these are answers they want to hear.
Yep.
Someone is providing these people who are showing up a way to think about something that many people around the world are saying is very threatening, in a way that makes them say, oh, I don't have to worry about that at all.
Yeah, I think the most honest documentary title, and I mean this, documentary title of all time, was Gore's Inconvenient Truth, right? And like, that's part of why it was so unpalatable to so many people, because the more inconvenient something is, the less likely we want it to be true.
Yep.
And the less likely we're even willing to intake that information. And the more likely we are to go seek out happier, more convenient truths that buttress our existing thoughts and feelings. And so there's this like entire conference of Jordan Peterson, who does not know anything at all about climate change.
Been roundly
He is
disputed as not knowing anything.
wrong on every fucking level about climate change. He's not educated in the sciences that revolve around and deal with climate change. He has no expertise from an educational or formal level at all. He clearly doesn't understand the issues around climate change in even the most cursory way. But what he is a guy who, for whatever reason, and I don't understand it, other people like to listen to him speak.
Yeah.
And he's figured out that he can opine, like we were talking about at the beginning of the show, he can opine on the most urgent matters of the day. And because people like the sound of his fucking squeaky, Kermity voice, they will listen to him about any topic.
A philosophical Deepak Chopra.
Yeah.
Because he just says like deepity stuff and talks in circles. And none of it makes any sense if you listen, if you like pay attention to what he's saying.
It's all nothing.
It's all nonsense. It's all nothing. And then when you stop and you're like, but what you said didn't mean anything. Like people will push back and be very upset by it. They don't like that you point out that it's like he is genuinely waving something over here while he's hiding a fucking coin. Yeah. I mean, this is a magician's trick to pretend that he's doing something he is not. And one of the things too, that they're talking about this fucking conference where they are blatantly putting out papers and talking to people in this conference with facts that are completely altered. One of them, a person came out and gave a talk about how there's fewer hurricanes in the United States. And the climatologist who they talked to about this said, yeah, that's true. In this last several years, there have been more hurricanes overall. And there's been a lot more hurricanes in like the Caribbean and other places where there's warm water. There's been a lot more, but we're just not, if you're just counting the United States, no, there's been fewer. So you're technically right, but you're wrong about the global problem that we're under.
Yeah. And like these guys do this intensely specific cherry picking constantly. It's all this is. This is a cherry picking. And then they're saying things like, one of the guys, I don't remember what his name was, but he wrote a book about how, fossil fuels are the future of happiness in the world or some crazy bullshit. And it's like, these guys will kill us.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like these guys are existentially dangerous. They will actually kill us. And they don't care because they're going to survive it, right? They're old enough to where if they get rich enough, none of this impacts them. So they're going to get rich on the backs of the last fucking generation to not eat shit as hurricane after hurricane heats up in the Atlantic basin.
Yeah.
And they're going to be like, well, they're not here in America. And that's all we care about, evidently.
Yeah.
Because my ability to like see problems and empathize with the world, I guess, like stops off the coast of the Carolinas for some reason.
There's also this craziness of like thinking that the weather patterns are set now, right? there's this idea that like, oh, well, they changed. Yeah, we raised the degree and now we see what they are and they're not that big a deal. And you're like, no, they are changing, right? So your weather patterns are changing and there's no reason to think it's going to get any better than it is, right? So as things get hotter, the way in which rain comes in changes and it could fucking wipe out giant swaths of the United States in major droughts. Like it could be very easy to happen with very little effort on the planet. And they talk too in here about, you know, the worst part about this whole thing is that they talk about how there's been sort of a slowing down of fossil fuels, right? There's been a slowing that you can see in the models that we have done something to slow this down. It's still getting worse.
Right.
But that we've done something to slow it down. And what we also recognize too is that we slowed it down to still the highest it's ever been, right? So it was really high. And then we said, well, let's just keep it here instead of continuing up. But it's still as high as it's ever been of these fossil fuels that are getting released. But what this does is it says it's cool to fucking knock the brakes off because we've done something.
Yeah, right.
And now it's like, fuck all that. You don't need to do any of that. This is human flourishing at its best. We're going to be fine. Not as many hurricanes. It's going to be perfect. It's going to be best weather in the world. And so they're going to lie to you so that we kick the fucking brakes off and then it's going to get even worse, even faster.
Yeah, and they're make no mistake too that part of the goal here is not just climate change. Part of the goal of these misinformation specialists is to erode your confidence in expertise and to dilute the idea of who should and can be an expert on important topics.
Yeah.
That is a goal. That's what they want, right? So some of these guys, like climate change is just a vehicle for them to get you to believe that the way that we know true things is who got to argue or debate the best in a room full of like-minded dipshits. And that is not how any truth is found out. That is not how the reality of the world is made. That is how, you know, this whole thing is just like Jordan Peterson. I heard Jordan Peterson once described as a dumb man's conception of a smart man.
Yeah.
Right? And like these conferences are a stupid person's conception of how truth is discovered. Truth is not discovered and disseminated this way. This is a show, and it is a show meant to erode our faith in the institutions of higher learning and knowledge that actually help us achieve things and know things.
Next.
Sir, do you have a question?
Barack Hussein Obama. No, we're not doing that. Next.
This is good news. This story comes from AP. This is good. We're going back and forth.
Good news.
Whew. Liberal and moderate candidates take control of school boards and contentious races across the U.S. This is great news because this was going the other way for a while.
It was. And it was not only going the other way for a while, it really felt like it was a lost cause. It genuinely felt like a lost cause when you talked about it because we saw so much change. But those people rattled so many fucking sabers. They were so angry and they were so vocal about it that they woke a bunch of people up who were in those districts. And those people were like, you're doing what now? You're fucking banning all these books? Like, what the fuck is happening? Yeah. And suddenly they were like, no, man, 70% of the Moms of Liberty back candidates lost.
That's 70%. Fucking delicious. That's I wonder when I read this, do you think the Republican, if you're a Republican, stop listening right now.
Yeah.
Stop listening forever,
just
but particularly right now. But I genuinely, do you think that the takeaway from this should be, okay, let's do it again and not show our hand. Let's do it again and like, let's decide on what our platform is and we're not going to be as
they
open.
Can't do
We're
that.
going to be more vocal.
Or
do you think that the things they're trying to accomplish are
they
just
can't do
too
that.
Yeah.
Now, these are the people who scream prayers from the street corner. They can't do that.
You're right.
They can't do that.
Now I feel, you're right.
They are, they have, and they have to inflict their moral code on other people or their life is meaningless, right? So they have to do these things. I feel like they have to play their hand. And when they did across the nation, like one person lost by 25 points when they came out and were like trying to ban books. They tried to ban books before and they talked about the race and they said they lost by 25 points.
That's a crushing defeat.
Like that's like Like, that's like me running for something. I mean, like, that's like the birthday party. Like, it's genuinely that bad.
The birthday
it's
party.
that bad,
It is.
right? It's so bad. So I am happy and excited that that's where we're at and that there is a group of people in this country, young parents, I think, that are looking around and saying, oh, no, absolutely not. You are not going to do this. We are going to take this back. And they did in a lot of places.
Yeah, which is wonderful. And it's exactly what we need to do. Take the school boards and take all the races straight up the line.
What if the democracy we thought we were serving no longer exists? And the republic has become the very evil we've been fighting to destroy.
Well, and now it's bad news again. This is from the Rolling Stone. Ohio Republicans say it is their God-given right to restrict abortion access. So last week, I think it was last week.
It was last week, wasn't it? We talked about it last week, but it happened Tuesday. So
Tuesday before.
Tuesday before last week.
So Republicans went out to vote. They showed up. On the ballot was a ballot measure. That ballot measure would essentially enshrine a right to abortion into the Ohio state constitution. The Republicans cheated before that, right? So because they knew that every single time probably that abortion rights were on ballots all across the country that they lose, their side loses. So what they did first is they tried to say, actually, let's make a new law where instead of a plurality to amend the Constitution, you need 60 votes. And everybody was like, no, that's a backdoor way to say you're trying to defeat this proposition. So they defeated that first. Then they had their fucking actual constitutional amendment. And it was not close.
Not even close.
It was not close.
Not even close.
Ohioans showed up and said, actually, we don't want the government to meddle in our vaginas and uteruses. That's not what we want at all. Stay the fuck out. And they won. And it was like you said, not close. And now the Republicans are like, okay, we'll let you have your rights when you pull them out of a hat and it's not a practice.
But hear me out here. We're not going to follow what just happened, what the people wanted. This week, Rick Santorum, let me see if I can find the clip of Rick Santorum saying this democracy thing.
You put very sexy things like abortion and marijuana on the ballot, and a lot of young people come out and vote. It was a secret sauce for disaster in Ohio. I don't know what they were thinking, but that's why I thank goodness that most of the states in this country don't allow you to put everything on the ballot because pure democracies are not the way to run a country.
So there's Rick Santorum. You just being a horrible fucking person. And Santorum, as we know, means the blood and lube that comes out of your ass after anal sex, right? Is that what it is?
And maybe a guy talking about the frothy mix of blood and lube.
I forgot the poetry of it, right? I had the nuts and bolts, Tom. I had the nuts and bolts of what but it's the poetry.
It's the poetry
of frothy mix, right?
Maybe he shouldn't be talking about the secret sauce. You know, maybe Santorum.
Santorum should stay away from all
secret
sauces.
sauce. Maybe secret sauce is not that's not your.
It's definitely a reduction sauce. That's for sure. You know, he's such a gross person, and he's been gross forever. But like that is the quiet part out loud, right?
Yeah.
When they're saying we don't want to follow, when we ask the people of the state, look, we're asking you, do you want this? And the people of the state say no.
Yeah.
We want to keep abortion rights. And then they're like, no, but what we really want to do is inflict this on you, even though so many people came out and voted for it. This is genuinely overthrowing the people. It's a tyranny of the minority.
It is. And like, listen to the first part of what he says. I think there's some really important stuff. What he says is when you put sexy issues like abortion and marijuana on, young people come out and vote. There's so much to unpack there. First of all, like abortion is not a sexy issue. It is you're taking away people's right to gain access to health care is a monstrous restriction of women's bodily autonomy.
Terrible.
It is not a sexy issue. What he's saying is like, we can't fire up the young people. What he's saying is when we don't want young people to exercise their rights in America, and we need to do things that reduces their engagement with civics and their responsibilities. That's literally what he's saying. Because the lesson he's taking away is we can't put things on the ballot that engage young people in the political process, because we know that the more people who are eligible to vote that turn out to vote, the more we lose. It's like right there. It's right there. And you're like, yeah, man, because most people aren't the worst.
Yeah.
Most people aren't the fucking worst like you.
And he's saying, don't put these decisions in their hands at all.
Right. Yeah.
We should never. We should always just rule by fiat. They put boring old people on the ballot, and then they have to vote for boring old people or nobody. And then they vote for a boring old person, and then they just make the decisions for them.
Yeah. They're basically like, wasn't it better when we made all our decisions in secret because nobody watches C-SPAN?
Yeah.
Wasn't that better? And you're like, no, man, that was fucking worse. And people want to have a say in their fucking bodily autonomy. And if you are in a state that has the ability to put these things to the people by referendum, that's for a reason.
Yeah.
That's for a reason. These are the guys who wanted to give it back to the states, right? We didn't want to give it back. I didn't want to give it back to the states. I was not like, hey, big states' rights guy. Yeah. I thought that was a terrible idea. Now they give it back to the states. And every time without exception, when you give it back to the states and the people in that state are allowed to voice their opinion on it, every single time, no exception, they get their rights back.
Yeah. And it's going to happen every single time.
Yeah.
It's going to happen every single time. Roe was good policy.
Yeah.
Roe was good policy for the country because it appeased, I think, two sides of a very contentious issue. It appeased one side to allow them access to abortion all over the country, not having to travel, but restricted that access. And for the people who were very upset about abortion, again, it restricted some access to abortion. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't ideal. But what it was balancing between two extremes of people who wanted something and other people who did not want it at all.
Right.
And it allowed for nuance, and it allowed for the America to, for 50 years, have abortion rights for people and not, and still have, I think, a lot of people, I mean, granted, a lot of people were very insane about Roe v. Wade.
Sure, yeah.
But I think for the most part, most people were cool with how it played out. They were okay with it. It was just really these vociferous, crazy right-wing religious people who were the ones who were fighting against it every single time and every step of the way. And now you're seeing that was a failure on their part because all the people that should be on their side are jumping ship and being like, absolutely not. Nobody wanted your way. You were the only squeaky wheel.
Yep. And come to find out, you didn't want your way either.
Yeah.
Because what you wanted, like, you're like, throw it back to the states. And they were very smug about it. Because like, we'll throw it back to the states, and the states that we control will outlaw it. And I don't think that they anticipated that in many of these states, Ohio certainly didn't anticipate this, that in many of these states, that the people would be like, actually, we have a process that allows us to chit-chat about this. We're going to chit-chat. We're going to vote. We're going to change it. We don't give a shit how many Republicans you vote. It's now in our Constitution, dickweeds.
Yeah.
And like, they are trying to say like, oh, it's not good in the Constitution. Now, we don't like the way it's in there. They're really like struggling for some
They're trying to find
strategy.
some reason and what happens when they take this suit to the Supreme Court? Is the Supreme Court going to go against their own decision to kick it back down to the states?
I know. They're in a bind, right?
They're in a bind
They're
now.
in a real fucking bind because it's exactly right. Like the Supreme Court now has to make this be like, well, is this a federal? Do we overstep federally or do we allow the states? Like, their heads are, it's going to make scanners, dude.
Oh, yeah. Especially a couple of them on there.
Enough! You want to fight? You fight me, you big, ugly, smelly breath sucker! How about you? Stream bean Rick James looking fool.
Peace, kill it.
Best thing that's happened all week.
Tom, I got to play this.
It's the best thing that's happened all week.
GOP senator tries to physically fight union boss during hearing. No, this is not happening during the 1950s, folks. It is happening right now. This week, this guy here.
Oh, this comes from idiocracy.com, right?
Man, seriously. But this guy, I want to point out this guy here. Now, this is Mark Wayne. Is your name
Senator
Mark Wayne?
Mark Wayne.
Is your name Mark Wayne? Because that's really something else. Mark Wayne.
I'm going to name him Mark and Wayne. Mark Wayne.
Mark Wayne Mullen. Go. So Mark Wayne Mullen is a senator from Oklahoma. And he is in a hearing or whatever. And I want to point out, too, who he is. He was one of these people who tuned everybody up for January 6th.
Yeah.
And then when they rushed the Capitol, there's a very great picture of him hiding behind chairs. So tough guy, fucking Marky Wayne, Marky Mark Mullins or whatever his name is. He did this. So there's a union boss that they had this guy's been in fucking Congress multiple times because I've seen him like almost all summer. They've been talking to this guy for a long time.
This Mark Wayne guy?
No, the union guy. They must have had him come back multiple times. Anyway, they, I guess, had been jawing each other previously online. And so we're catching it where Mark Wayne is now addressing the person out that they're interviewing, and he's talking about the things that were said online. So I'm going to fill you in. That's where we're at in this Senate hearing, folks. That's where this is taking place. This isn't a Waffle House. Okay? This is fucking a Senate hearing. So let me just play it.
Everybody knows this here. And the last time, him and I kind of had a back and forth. Appreciate your demeanor today. It's quite different. But after you left here, you got pretty excited about the keyboard. In fact, you tweeted at me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And let me read what the last one said. It said, greedy CEO who pretends like he's self-made. Sir, I wish you was in the truck with me when I was building my plumbing company myself. And my wife was running the office because I sure remember working pretty hard and long hours. Pretends like he's self-made. What a clown. Fraud. Always has been, always will be. Quit the tough guy act in these Senate hearings. You know where to find me. Any place, anytime, cowboy. Sir, this is a time, this is a place. If you want to run your mouth, we can be two consenting adults. We can finish it here.
Okay, that's fine. Perfect.
You want to do it now?
I'd love to do it right now.
Well, stand your butt up then.
You stand your butt up.
Oh, hold on.
Big guy.
No, stop it.
Is that your solution?
Hold it. No, sit down. Sit down. Okay. You're a United States Senator. Sit down.
Active.
Oh, okay.
Sit down, please.
All right.
Can I respond?
Hold it. If we can, no, I have the mic.
said.
I'm sorry.
This is
hold
what
it.
he said.
You'll have your time.
Okay.
Can I respond?
Oh, no, you can't. This is a hearing. And God knows the American people have enough contempt for Congress. Let's not
I don't
make
like
it worse.
thugs and bullies.
And that's
I don't like you because you just described yourself.
Hold it. You have the mic.
Yeah.
You have time.
All right.
Make your statement.
I love
Bernie Sanders like shaming both of them.
I love Bernie Sanders as like the Bruce Buffer of the Senate. Like I want to see Bernie
Let's get
Sanders
ready to rumble.
It's time. But seriously, this is so far. I'm goofing, but like Bernie Sanders, a fucking guy who like huddles in the rain with his mittens on, has to be like, enough, tough guys.
Yeah.
Cut your shit out. You're fucking set. Do you realize what is happening right now?
I don't.
This is the chaos we've devolved into, the juvenile antics.
I think there are plenty of times in my life where somebody said something to me online and I said, I wish you were next to me when you said that. Because you wouldn't have said it if you're next to me. I know that's a symptom of our online life. And I recognize that. And I know I've said that in the past. I'm a podcaster. Okay? I'm a fucking podcast. I'm a content creator. I'm a podcaster. That's what I do for a fucking living, right? So if my dumb ass can't fight his way off of a tweet and has to be like, I wish you'd say that to my face, that's just me being a dope.
Yep.
If you're a fucking senator, you should be able to argue your way around this guy so he make him look like a fool. Why are we allowing people to be one of 100 people in this country who make some of the most important decisions about the direction of this country be fucking knuckleheads? I mean, dude, that's your solution. That's your senatorial solution.
Yep.
Is to fucking fist fight somebody? Like you're the weakest. That's the weakest thing that you can do. It is essentially admitting defeat.
It is 100%.
You mad, bro?
Yep. Yeah. It is 1,000% an admission of defeat. You gotta, like, I was thinking when Sanders was like, you've got the mic, it's your time, you'll have your time. Every minute that guy has access to that microphone, he is one of the most powerful people in our country.
Absolutely.
He has a voice in that moment that is the power of that voice far outweighs the power of this microphone or your microphone. Sure. And to use that to basically be like, you want to take this outside? To get into like some like fucking bar brawl? Like I'm 45, man. Like my fighting days are 30 years old. Like that shit's like, nobody does that anymore. Yeah. Nobody does that anymore. And like he said, like he was later interviewed and he's like, well, I'm from Oklahoma. And that's how it's about we solve problems down in Oklahoma.
Punch a steer in the mouth.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like, no, nobody, this is not how adults, any adult, no adult solves a problem like this. I don't care how big your body is.
Yeah.
If you solve your problems by knocking people out, you're a fucking child.
I'm reminded of an incident between you and Sargon.
Yeah.
So there's a guy named Sargon. If we're on the internet, on the YouTubes, I'm sure there's plenty of people who know who he is.
Right.
And he's a guy from the UK who came over to speak at a conference, and you happened to show up at that conference to talk to Thomas Smith in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a video of you two arguing.
Yeah.
There's a video of you two arguing and you defeating his points, right? You're just defeating him. He's trying to argue with you and you're just defeating him. And he resorts to bouncing off of you to try to intimidate you. Tom's just standing there and Sargon like tries to walk past him and almost knocks himself over.
Yeah, he shoulder checks
bouncing off of Tom because he can't shoulder check Tom.
Right.
Because Tom's like Ram Man. He's like fully solid muscle. So he bounced in and he almost tripped him. He almost fell down. There's a video of him like literally almost falling down. But he's the one who lost.
Yeah.
He's the one who resorted to violence. He's the one who tried to attack you. And then the people who were paying attention to him tried to paint it as if you were the one to attack him.
Yeah, they tried to paint me as the aggressor.
Because that's how you lost. That's how he lost the argument.
Right.
And they didn't have it in themselves to like a guy who would be so easily beaten in an argument.
Yep.
And so they had to paint you as the aggressor, as like Tom was the one. And you literally are just standing there and he bounced right off you. And I'm reminded of that because like at that moment, he 100% lost that argument. He couldn't argue with you anymore. You had every point and he was just like, oh, I'm really mad. And he got like 3-year-old angry.
Yep, he did.
And this is what this guy is. This guy is throwing a temper tantrum in the middle of the Senate. And throwing a goddamn we don't pay you for that.
No. Yeah. Look, the thing is like the minute you lose your cool and it like devolves into physicality, like doesn't matter what you're fighting about now anyway. It's all gone. It's all gone. I knew in the Sargon moment, the same guy with this guy should have known is that like, if this goes into like, if this becomes physical, nobody's going to win, right? Like I can win the argument if we can have an argument. I can't win the argument if I knock him out, right? Yeah. I will lose that argument if I knock him out. If this guy like goes and fist fights the fucking Teamster or whatever, like he loses. When we lose our tempers, we lose. When we blow our tops, we become children.
It's true.
Like, so we have to restrain that. And if we can't maintain that in ourselves, we have no business being on the fucking Senate.
I know, man.
Get a microphone and be a podcaster. Yeah, you can get as mad as you want.
Go hang out with Joe Rogan and yell at fucking fights or whatever.
Right.
You know, like that's your calling. Go do that. But the idea that guy is one of 100 people who has literally his hand on the rudder for this country is terrifying.
But that's what the Republicans have come to.
Yeah.
Like the Republican Party genuinely is a bunch of dumbass troll bullies.
Yeah.
And they are out of solutions. And they're backed into this corner intellectually. And now they just want to throw hands.
Speaking of, Kevin McCarthy evidently had a shoving match. Do you want to read this? It reads really weird to me.
It does, but I don't know how else to get this to the audience, so. Former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy appeared to shove and elbow one of his GOP colleagues on Tuesday afternoon, prompting a hallway chase in the chamber. Claudia Grisales, an NPR congressional correspondent, detailed the incident on Twitter, where she said she was speaking with Representative Tim Burchett when the former House Speaker walked by with his detail and McCarthy shoved Burchett. Burchett lunged towards me. I thought it was a joke and it wasn't. And a chase ensued. The Tennessee Republican followed McCarthy down a hallway, yelling at him, asking why he hit them. And McCarthy replied, "I didn't elbow you in the back." McCarthy reported, prompting Burchett to say, "You got no guts. You did so. The reporter said right there. What kind of chicken move is it? You're pathetic, man. You're so pathetic."
So she's talking to another person.
Yeah.
And as she's talking to him, he sort of flies into her face as McCarthy walks behind him. And this guy accuses McCarthy of hitting him from behind. It's really written, not it's awkward. It's awkwardly written, but that's essentially what happened. And then they fought about whether or not it actually happened. And McCarthy denies that it happened.
But I love that they had a fucking chase down the hallway. The chaos of it, just the lack of decorum. The thing is, like, Cecil, if I'm in a hallway and I am a normal person and something, ba-dum, like knocks into me, my first thought is not, did the former speaker of the House just try to hit me in the back? Did he just
train on the tracks me?
Right.
What is happening here?
Right, yeah. Instead, I'd be like, somebody bumped me, and I'd look, and the person who bumped me would be like, oh, fuck, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And it'd be like, that was just
whenever I do that, I always presume that I'm at fault. I'm always like, I did something wrong. I moving with my body in the world, and I'm terrible with it. So I apologize.
I am the same. Like, I could be standing still and somebody will boo-goo, and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll do the same thing.
I'm clumsy. I'm probably at fault.
I can't tell you how many times I've stepped back on people before.
Oh my God.
Because I'm just like, I'm a guy who would like, I don't realize the space that's around me, and I sometimes step backwards and I'll step on somebody. Like, oh God, I feel like an asshole.
Do you do that in your kitchen with Sarah? Like, if you're both in the kitchen and you're like doing stuff?
Sarah doesn't really help with cooking. So that doesn't happen very often. Most of the time it's like I'm doing stuff and then she'll do stuff. And so like we don't do stuff together.
So for the last couple of years, while Haley's been sick, we're both in the kitchen. We're both like cooking different things.
Oh, yeah.
So like, cause like I don't eat, like she can't eat the same meals I'm eating, right? So we're making our own food. And so like, and it makes both of us fucking crazy, but it makes her crazier than it makes me. So we're both doing this like fucking like
it's a dance.
It's
a dance.
Yeah. And we're both bad at it.
Yeah.
Because like when you get in the zone, you miss where the other person's at.
Yeah.
And it's just like one day, like I'm just gonna get like a fucking pot of hot water in my face or something. Like it's gonna be bad times. I'm gonna get Kevin McCarthy, is what I'm saying. She's gonna chase me down the hallway of my house.
You guys are running around your island.
You're trying to fight me?
Like the Two Stooges. She's trying to poke you in the eye. And you're doing
a hand in front. Yeah.
You're a pure soul. But you didn't say God bless you when I sneezed.
Loki?
You're getting off light.
Loki!
I know, I'm coming.
You're so lucky.
This story is from the Friendly Atheist. West Virginia prison finally releases atheist inmate denied parole for refusing to profess Christianity.
This is American Atheists won a case.
Yes, indeed, they did.
And I think this is great. This is the 12-step stuff that they make people do when they go into prison. So when they go into prison, often the parole is contingent on them doing something extra based on, trying to get off drugs or whatever it is, maybe get off alcohol. They say you got to go through a 12-step program. We know from talking about this in the past, if you don't know and you've never heard this before, the 12-step program is very religious. It's based on a religious ideology. It has religious components to it. It has higher power stuff to it. It has not just that you need to like acknowledge it, but you also have to like talk about higher power stuff too. It's not, it's like in
You can't
depth.
passively
It's not
do
just,
the religious
you can't
stuff.
just passively be like, yeah, there's a whatever, higher power. Anyway, I'm going to try to quit drugs or whatever. No, there's more to it than that. And because they are resorting to using this 12-step process, some people don't want to profess this in these things. And this parole was denied because this guy wasn't able to really participate fully in this because he didn't believe.
Yeah, and he wasn't trying to get out of doing some kind of program based around substance abuse, right? He asked for secular accommodations, and they refused his request for secular accommodations, and essentially were like, it's this or you stay in prison, we don't grant your parole. So like, that's not a choice. That's straight up fucking like religious coercion.
Sure.
That's what that is.
It's a religious plea deal.
Yeah. So the American Atheists sued.
Yeah.
They sued on his behalf. They agreed to represent him. They sued and they fucking won.
Yeah. And I saw Jeff Blackwell, who's been on the show a couple times.
Yeah. Good guy.
He posted about this. So they're happy that they won. And I'm happy, like this is the kind of stuff that American Atheists, that you should just be happy that there's an organization out there that's doing this work, right? They are out there doing this hard work all the time. And I think that's amazing. It's just genuinely, It's genuinely good work, and it needs to be done because our nation is constantly shifting more and more towards this sort of religious theocracy because of the people that are in power, not because of the population.
No, yeah.
Because of the people that are in power. And they think they can get away with stuff like this.
Yeah, and if we let them get away with it, they'll be right.
Right.
They'll be right. The thing that this is this is just one case and it's one guy, but it's also a precedent.
Yeah. And
that's important too, right? Because now they're going to try, and the next time the prison has this come up, they're gonna be like, well, we already lost the last case.
And we know that somebody's just gonna take that in and be like, I'm suing you and now you got to do it.
Yep.
And so they're gonna have to create secular accommodations for people, which they should have in the first place.
Anyway.
So that's going to wrap it up for this week. We want to mention that this last week, we were talking to the other crew that does Vulgarity for Charity. That's the Puzzle and the Thunderstorm guys. And we had a conversation with them, and it appears that somehow there was some roasts that were missed from the last year that we did it. So last year's roasts weren't completely done last year. So we are going to make up some roasts from last year that were overlooked. I guess there was a spreadsheet error. So what's going to happen is we're going to do another show of last year's roast. We'll mention which ones those are, but those will be coming out in the next couple weeks. I think it might be a scathing show. I'm not sure. I did see someone start to put that together. So we're going to definitely have that as one of the roast shows that's coming up. But this will release on Monday. And in a few minutes, we're going to be doing a live stream where we're going to be raising money for Modest Needs. But at that point, I think by Monday, we'll have met our match of $100,000. But I was contacted by Keith from Modest Needs, and he said that there is another $50,000 on the table. So if you were waiting till the very end, thinking, you know what, I'm just going to wait, I'm going to see how far they get, there's still double your money on the table. So please continue to give until Thanksgiving at midnight. That's when we call quits, and that's when we stop accepting roast requests. We, of course, encourage you to give all year round, and Modest Needs wants people to become monthly members, of course.
Absolutely.
But I want to say we have a cutoff at midnight, so if it comes in at 12:01, it won't be included in that big spreadsheet that we do. But please continue to give all the way up until that last minute, because there's another $50,000 on the table. And I think we're probably going to eat into some of that tonight.
Yep.
All right. That's going to wrap it up for this week. We're going to leave you like we always do with the Skeptic's Creed.
Credulity is not a virtue. It's fortune cookie cutter, mommy issue, hypno-Babylon bullshit. Couched in scientician, double bubble, toil and trouble, pseudo quasi alternative, acupunctuating, pressurized, stereogram, pyramidal, free energy healing, watered downward spiral, brain deadpan sales pitch, late night info docutainment. Leo, Pisces, cancer cures, detox, reflex, foot massage, death in towers, tarot cards, psychic healing, crystal balls, Bigfoot, Yeti, aliens, churches, mosques and synagogues, temples, dragons, giant worms, Atlantis, dolphins, truthers, birthers, witches, wizards, vaccine nuts, shaman healers, evangelists, conspiracy, doublespeak, stigmata, nonsense. Expose your sides. Thrust your hands, bloody, evidential, conclusive. Doubt even this.
The opinions and information provided on this podcast are intended for entertainment purposes only. All opinions are solely that of Glory Hole Studios, LLC. Cognitive Dissonance makes no representations as to accuracy, completeness, currentness, suitability, or validity of any information, and will not be liable for any errors, damages, or butthurt arising from consumption. All information is provided on an as-is basis. No refunds. Produced in association with the local Dairy Council and viewers like you.